Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Olson. I lead the Firestone Direct business, which is part of Bridgestone. We are a mobile tire and service company. And Janet, thank you for finding out how to explain myself. I am also a Lucille Ball, and I'm never hidden from who I am, but I've never been able to define that so clearly. So thank you for giving me that gift today.
Have lunch. We should get together, the two Lucy.
I think so.
Well, next, Laquita, we'll go to you. Can you please give us a self-introduction?
Yes. First, hi, Janet. So good to see you, dear friend. I am Laquita Stribling. I'm Vice President of Sales and Customer Experience with Randstad. Randstad is the world's largest HR solutions provider. I am also an independent corporate director for Citizens Bank, which is the largest continuously running Black-owned bank in the country. And I serve on a number of nonprofit boards. So I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon.
We are excited you're with us. Thank you. And next, Daleen, we'll go to you. Can you please give us a self-introduction?
Hi, everyone. I'm Daleen Birchfield. I work for Dollar General Corporation. And if you don't know us, well, you probably do. We're the ones that are on every corner in every neighborhood, it seems like. We have over 19,000 stores and over 170,000 employees. I've had the honor of working for this incredible retailer for going on 32 years.
Well, we are excited you're with us today. And next, we're going to go to Margot. Margot, can you say hello?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am Margot DeLashmutt. I am a vice president within the U.S. distribution arm of BlackRock. BlackRock is actually the largest asset manager globally. So essentially what I do, I work closely with financial advisors and planners throughout the state of Tennessee to really help consult on their businesses and their portfolio processes. I've been in the financial services industry now since 2008. So I can connect with Janet on that idea of being in a very male-dominated industry for sure. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being with us. And Kelly, we're going to go to you next. Kelly, can you please give us a self-introduction? I don't know, Kelly was having some audio issues logging in. So we're going to go to April next. April, can you give us a self-introduction?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. My name is April Jones. I'm a national director at Pfizer, working to build relationships with employers. My background is healthcare. I got my PharmD and my MBA both in Tennessee. Have resided in, grew up in small town West Tennessee, and just so thankful for the relationships and the incredible women that have become friends and mentors and along the way. So it's such an honor to see other women lifting each other up in this way.
Well, we're glad you're with us. And Kelly, we're going to go back to you one more time. Kelly, can you say hello? All right. Well, while she is working on her audio, we're just going to dive right into our questions. So for our first question, Laquita, we'll start with you on this question. Laquita, what is your definition of work-life balance? And what does the ideal balancing act look and feel like to you?
Well, I'm not going to evade the question, but I don't really subscribe to work-life balance. I don't believe that you can be 50-50 in most instances. I strive for workplace harmony, where the things I do at work and the things I have to do at home, that I find some harmony between the two. For example, hardly anything do I commit to on the weekends, because that is the time I have to recharge for myself and the time that I really try to give concentrated focus to my family and my friends and those things that bring me joy. And so every time I hear work-life balance, when I think about all the things that I have to juggle, I realize that's not a realistic expectation to put on myself. And, going back to Janet's grace and grit, I still work hard. I have a full plate that's always running over. But where I find myself doing things outside of my job and family that bring me intrinsic value, that I get inspiration and motivation from those things that I get myself involved in, especially those optional things that I take on. So for me, I think that harmony between work and family are the things where, you give of your time and your treasure and your gifts and your abilities on both sides, knowing that sometimes it may be a little out of balance one side or the other, and that's really okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So as we move on to our next question, Margot, we'll start with you and follow up with you, Angie and Kelly. Margot, do you think a remote work life allows for more work-life balance, or do you think it leads to issues with boundaries? If you have been working from home or leading remote teams, where do you see the benefits or the dangers?
Yeah, thanks, Ginger. I think that's a great question. So I've actually been working from home since 2015. So I was a work from homer before the pandemic. So the pandemic for me was just business as usual, for better or worse. I think it can really depend on your perspective and how intentional you are about how you integrate the two. So I guess I'll start with the dangers, some of the dangers that I have found myself having to navigate through in learning to work from home. First is your boss or your team leader may not always see the work that you're doing or the contribution that you're making as clearly as they might if you were in person in an office. So I find that demonstrating your value appropriately can be a danger. And so that's something that you have to learn to navigate. Burnout is definitely a danger when working from home. It's very, very easy to extend those work hours and work late or work on the weekends and stop and, pop into the office just to check email. And then an hour later, you're still there. So burnout is one of those things. And then isolation too. When you don't have that human physical contact on a day-to-day basis, I think that's a danger that you have to learn to work through. But for me personally, like the benefits far outweigh any of those dangers that I have had to navigate. I find that it's really easy to integrate the two if you're intentional about it. So I have some of my most productive days when I can do a load of dishes or a quick load of laundry in between calls, or run an errand in between meetings when I'm out and about seeing clients. I find that it's easier to get into the flow because you have fewer uncontrollable distractions with coworkers. I also find that I'm better at self-care when I work from home. I tend to eat healthier. I drink more water. I'm more apt to take that quick 15-minute break out on my back deck for some fresh air and sunshine. So, I think it really does allow for some opportunities, but it all comes back to that intentionality that you have with how do you set up your day?
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And Angie, we'll go to you on the same question.
Well, great, Margot. I think Margot did a great job of answering that. And maybe because you've had a bit more experience than I have, I started working this, work from home and trying to find that balance at the beginning of, the pandemic. So I was building a new startup company. So I was working tremendously long, ridiculous hours, and I wasn't being intentional. So, my message was about being, planful, same same words, just putting in a different synonym for it, I guess. But I had to start scheduling time to do what you said so well, Marta, like, don't forget to take a break and go outside and breathe fresh air. It's very important. There are certainly benefits that come from working at home, but they're only benefits if you make the time to seize them. And I wasn't doing that. And, when my neck no longer moved because I'd spent so much time at the computer and I couldn't see straight because, it was 14 hours in, I'm like, something is wrong with this, very, very wrong. So it was just about being planful and thoughtful. And that seems so easy, but it is also is equally easy just to get lost in it all. So there are great benefits. I live out in Gallatin and work downtown. I do a hybrid work now. But I think my days from working at home can be so much more productive, but I have to spread the balance of that. The extra hour and a half that I'm not driving, I'm trying to be more planful and spend that time and use some of it out walking and enjoying for myself and giving some of that back to the business that, we're trying to build here. So it is just that. And the beauty of it is that when I'm at home, I can do all of that in the same pair of yoga pants that I'm wearing. So lots of benefits to be had, I think. But I think Margot did a great job, so I won't belabor it more than that.
Well, thank you. And Kelly, we'll end with you on this question. Can you talk about a remote work life and work-life balance? Kelly, we can't hear you. Okay. Well, you try to call in and we'll see. I can see you when you call in. So as we move to our next question, for this question, Daleen, we'll start with you on this question, and then we'll go to you, Margot and April. Daleen, what systems does your organization have in place to help employees achieve work-life balance? Do they have programs to deal with crises, stress, or burnout?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate here with Dollar General that we have an incredible focus on that. And I would say that I would love to say that prior to COVID, we always had these great systems, but the reality is that a lot of what happened with COVID and a lot of what happened to our employees being frontline, we never closed stores. We were always there. And then those of us who supported the stores were required to be online. So we never took a break during this. And so through that program, we created some systems. We have something called the Employee Assistance Program, where we offer free counseling to every one of our employees, where they can call into a number and they can speak to a health representative, to a therapist, if they need to, just for that mental break. We also have a great mentorship here at Dollar General, and we have what we call employee resource groups, where we have groups of individuals who have likeness in what they love, what brings them passion and energy. And so we have a lot of small groups like that we link people to, just to try to keep that human connection, as Margot said, to make sure that we're being, with each other and helping each other and supporting each other.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So as we go to our next question, actually for this next question, Margot, we're going to start with you, and then April, go to you next. Margot, what are the signs for you personally that you're becoming unbalanced? And how do you react to those warning signs, and how do you recalibrate?
Well, Ginger, my fiance would probably tell you that I become a very unlivable with person. But really for me, like I can physically feel it when I become unbalanced. My mood shifts. I tend to be more lethargic, very, less motivated. I'm a very high energy, bubbly person naturally, and all of that kind of dissipates. I just feel very meh all the time. So for me, what do we do? How do we kind of recalibrate? First thing I always do is move my body. If the weather's nice, I'll get outside, get some fresh air, sunshine, take the dogs for a walk, hop. I'm a big cyclist, so I hop on the Peloton. It doesn't matter what it is. I just try to move my body. The next thing I do that I found that it really helps me is I block time on my calendar to think. And it sounds silly, or it sounded silly to me early on when I first started doing this. I'm like, wait, I have to make time to think. That doesn't sound right. But I do have to sometimes. And so usually for me, when I feel imbalanced, it's because I've got too many things bouncing around in my head. And I'm very overwhelmed by it all. So I have found that I do my best thinking when I'm on an airplane, because I'm forced to sit still. I'm forced to just like be where I'm at. And so I've been working really hard to try to recreate that like focus flow on a more regular basis without having to get on an airplane, because who wants to really do that? So I will go to a coffee shop because there's way too many distractions working from home to really focus and think. I put my headphones on, I use noise canceling mode, and just dump all of the things that are in my brain onto a piece of paper. And then I'll start to like go through that list and prioritize and classify things. So what's important, what's not important, what can I control, what can I not control? And then usually by the end of that session, I find that like I just feel so much more aligned and so much more in balance. And then I can take action on those things that are controllable and are important and try to just like let the rest of it go.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. And April, we'll follow up with you on the same question.
Yeah, I can really relate to Margot on that. I think typically I'm very positive, and when I'm feeling overwhelmed and unbalanced, the anxiety, fatigue, crankiness, frustration, all of those things definitely rear their ugly head. And for me, it's finding things that bring you joy, right? So I take a breather, snuggle with my kids, just really try to unplug from whatever is been holding my attention for so long. And then I really try to like Marco said, reassess what are my current priorities. For me, I have a kind of like a question set that I have formulated that I put around it. And that's really like, okay, I'm stressed out. What do I have to deal with? For each thing, I think about what's my goal? Like, why am I spending time in that? Do I have to, or is it, do I want to? Is it impactful? Will this opportunity always be there? Will it exist later? What's the duration of the commitment? And, if it's a short-lived thing, or I'm kind of at the end of that cycle, maybe I can just power through a little bit longer. But really just kind of assessing what I have on my plate. Even to the point of like, is there impact? Like, are the actions that I'm taking, are they impactful? And if they're not, why? Like, how can I change the way I'm doing something? Maybe I'm just being ineffective at it, and that's why I'm getting overwhelmed and frustrated. And then, what is the vibe about it? Like, if I think about this, if I think about this task or this project or what have you, like, do I have an anxious vibe? Am I stressed about it? Do I dread it? Do I put it off? Like, or is it something that I know genuinely brings me satisfaction? And a lot of times, like, those are the ways that I determine what I maybe need to take off my plate, or what I need to really reinvest, like reinvigorate and reinvest in, perhaps with a fresh perspective.
And Kelly, we're going to try with you again. Can you say hello? Can you hear?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Okay, now we can hear you. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'm going to restate this question again. Kelly, what are the signs for you personally that you're becoming unbalanced, and how do you react to those warning signs, and how do you recalibrate?
I'll be honest with you, in a busy world that we live in, it's very easy to get unbalanced. And for me, it's this feeling of probably impending doom. It's not realistic, but really gives me that kind of flag up in the air that I'm getting to a point where I need to recalibrate myself. And one of the ways that I do that is really acknowledging that my mind is made for ideas, and that if I am trying to hold a lot of information inside of it, things that I need to do, that takes up room for creativity and productivity. So one of the things that I do to help recalibrate is to pause for a moment and take sticky notes and write all the things that I need to do on, and then take the things that I can do in 2 to 3 minutes and get them off my plate. And then I can prioritize the other things in need to do now or can wait. So that's one way that I recalibrate. And the other way is I plan for things in the future that are fun, a vacation, a time with family to look forward to. Probably those are the ways that I get back to kind of an equilibrium.
Well, thank you for that. And as we move on to our next question, April, we'll start with you and then follow up with you, Lakita and Angie. April, how have you been able to advance in your career without feeling as though you're sacrificing family roles, personal fulfillment, or mental health? Have there been crisis times when you couldn't do everything you needed to do?
Yes. Yes, there have been times, where you can feel overwhelmed. One of the things I would say, like back to the earlier point today about grace. So I think, we're not women weren't made in the image of a pack mule. We really aren't made to carry everything all the time, till the end of time. So, it's really about being intentional, and to be honest, crisis happens. My whole book, No Mess, No Message, about the time where we had to deal with my toddler's childhood cancer. So, things happen. As leaders, we see it in our associates, we see it in our friends and our family members. It happens to us sometimes. And so particularly that can be very stressful when we already carry so much. So, in terms of like being able to continue to push on, continue to balance, to be able to advance, I think we have to be very intentional and about our time, and also very self-aware, and give ourselves some grace. I like to say my strategy is sometimes like pretend that you are actually not you, but your best friend. And if you're having a conversation with your best friend and you're looking at her and all the things that she's managing, all the things that you're managing, what advice would you give her? Try to think about it from maybe a different lens or a different perspective, because sometimes maybe we're in a season where we have to, adjust some things. Maybe we need to deprioritize something. Maybe we need to ask our village for a little support. I think we think that asking for support makes us look weak, or we're being a burden. Sometimes saying no to something, we feel like we're being bad humans, we're being mean. Or, even saying that we can't complete something, or that it's not the right time, is admitting failure. And none of those things are true. And so that's really how I think that I've been able to continue to move on, is just really and continue to grow personally and professionally, is really trying to keep a good pulse on what I'm dealing with and how to have grace.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. And Angie, we'll go to you next on the same question.
Excellent. And I would say that I think I made many mistakes as I matured in my career. And I have a teammate that works for me, and she always says, "Now that you're blonde, Angie," and I'm like, "I'm not actually blonde. This is gray." I think she's trying to be kind, but like I earned this, and I learned over the years that, I don't have to always just prove it through trying to show that I'll work the hardest and do the most, because that's not what everybody will always remember. But I think that, I did sacrifice my mental health and my, my personal well-being many times just to show up and be present and be seen. And I think I put that on my own shoulders, and many times did that to myself. And I said to myself, well, I'm the single woman at this table. I was a married woman, but meaning the only woman oftentimes at the table is what I'm trying to say, working in the automotive industry. And I'm not, I want to be seen and heard. I didn't always have to be seen and heard. And once I started to maybe recognize that, and frankly, it did take some crisis in my life probably to recognize that. And I had to step back and say, what am I going to do now? And the crisis were terrible times. It was, a death and another death, and I couldn't be there, but it was okay because I had a plan, I had a team, and I had shown up more than enough. And I knew I was capable, and the business was capable of continuing to run, and I delegated and trusted in others. And when I came back, the business was running, the team was okay, and they still cared about me, and we still had, momentum to move forward. And it was a huge lesson for me to learn. And it really just made my team better, in fact. And, the business grew, and so did I. So I think, sometimes you just learn from not doing it right. And for me, that has been really empowering now as I'm continuing to grow and finding better balance for myself. So I think I'm just going to keep getting better is what I've decided.
Well, thank you for that. And Lakita, we'll end with you on this question.
Okay. Well, truth of the matter is we all only have 24 hours in a day. And so prioritizing and reprioritizing and deprioritizing is just a constant task to try to keep and maintain the harmony and the balance. I learned early on in leadership, because growing up, I always heard, you want something done right, do it yourself. And I quickly came to learn, well, that's not a smart thing. Because if you do, people will let you do everything by yourself. And so I quickly learned how important it was to surround myself with strong people who were even smarter than me and not be threatened by that. I remember hiring a manager on my team, and I paid him more than I was making because I knew ultimately that it would help me in terms of career advancement, in terms of really maintaining the work-life harmony, because a stronger team, I wouldn't have to necessarily touch every single thing. And be all things to all people, because I do think it's easy to get off kilter when you are stretching yourself, especially then trying to be all things to all people. And what ends up happening is you're presenting yourself very diminished in that way, and you're not bringing the best of yourself when you're that way. So thankfully, I learned that early on in my career that, trying to do everything myself was not a good strategy. Also, I live and die by my calendar. And so that can be a good thing. That can also be a bad thing, because if it ain't on my calendar, it's very likely it may not happen. But not just everything work related. I put my mani-pedi on there. I put my son's prom on there. I put, dinner with the husband on there, so that I can see when I go and look at, and usually on the weekends, I go and look a week ahead of time in terms of what I've got going on, where I've got availability to incorporate some other things. And so it really is, I think somebody mentioned, and it's true, you have to be so very intentional and deliberate and really owning and stay in charge of your life, because life will handle you if you don't handle life, and making sure that what's most important to you, that you find the time to make that happen. And those things that maybe used to be important, not so important, maybe they move down the list. And y'all know is okay. When I was younger in my career, in terms of board service and all these extra things I get to do now, well, nobody wanted me because, I didn't have much to offer. Now, over the years, I've had to learn to say, no, I just don't have the bandwidth, or that doesn't fit with what I have going on right now. And I think a lot of times as women, we feel so badly about having to do that. But when we stretch ourselves too thinly, then people don't get the best version of us anyway.
Very well said. Thank you. As we move on to our next question, Kelly, we'll start with you on this question and follow up with you, April. Kelly, do you find that hobbies, family activities, or volunteering enrich your work life, or vice versa?
For me, I find that it does enrich my life and gives me great fulfillment. While my job is very fulfilling, and I love what I do, being able to have creative outlets is important for me. And personally, that can look like anything from cooking and painting to I love to go to estate sales. So that is a very important part of disconnecting from the work that I do that can feel really heavy at times in the hospital world, and especially during this time that we've come out of through COVID and being so isolated. So yes, very important to me.
Well, thank you for that. And April, we'll follow up with you on the same question.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I even caution about not about fully investing yourself in one thing. And I think that we can lose our identity sometimes and attach too much importance and significance when we only invest all of us into one thing. I think that the ideal scenario is when you can find different things that allow you to explore different aspects of your creativity, of your talent, grow you and stretch you intellectually, personally, spiritually, physically. Even I think that growing as a person is really important, and we can't always get everything we need from one endeavor. I think one of the things I challenge about the terminology of work-life balance is that it implies balance. You think of like neutral, and it implies like neutral has to be, work must be negative and life must be positive enough to balance it out, or vice versa. Or that 50% of your time needs to be spent in each section. And I don't see that to be true. I think that we should be putting a little bit of effort and time and energy into a lot of different buckets that we are passionate about and that give us joy. And then, when we do have crisis, or we do have just learn about ourselves, we may decide to grow in a different area than we even intended as we initially planned. So I think that there's a lot of value in, exploring even seasonally, just like different things, and particularly when you can multi-purpose it, right? Like when a hobby ends up being something that you can enjoy with your significant other or your kids or friends, or when, perhaps something that you're really frustrated about in your role, you see an unmet need that you can't really impact in your role, but you can plug into perhaps a charity or nonprofit to kind of like hit that target in a different way. I think that you can find a lot of satisfaction in that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good to hear that. So as we move on to our next question, Margot, we'll direct this question to you. Margot, what techniques have been the most helpful in centering for you as you try to maintain balance and mental health? Yoga, meditation, volunteer work?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it's really about like, how do I start my day? I mentioned this earlier, like intentionality is super important for me. So I get up in the morning before the rest of my household is up. to make sure that I get my morning routine in before chaos ensues. I have a 7-year-old daughter. We have 2 rescue dogs, and my fiance. So between all of us, it gets crazy once everyone's up some days. So first and foremost, I drink a glass of water to hydrate myself. I get myself a cup of coffee after that. I journal. I'm really big into like I am statements and journaling gratitude to set my mindset. I read a devotional, and then I plan out my day. And so I really think about, Lakita, you mentioned this, like it's all on my calendar. I look at my to-dos, what I need to get done, and prioritize it, not based on like, is this a work or a non-work task? It's what are the things that need to be accomplished, across the board. I think there's a very common thread in all of us in this idea of balance and throwing it out the window and thinking about it more as harmony or integration of the way that we live our lives more full. So after my morning routine, a couple other things that I do to help maintain balance that have been helpful. I mentioned this earlier. I move my body. I'm very big on getting at least 30 minutes a day, ideally more, whether it's walking the dogs, cycling, strength training, yoga, stretching. I kind of do a little bit of everything to help keep my body physically balanced. And then I work closely with a dog foster organization here in town called Wags and Walks. I volunteer as well as I foster dogs and puppies for them. Because let's be honest, like caring for and playing with puppies, like it just brings me joy. And it also allows me to give back within the community. So those are some of the things that have been helpful for me.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So as we move on to our next question, Daleen, we'll direct this one to you. Daleen, how do you adapt to sudden crises at work, at home, or even worse, both at once?
Were you listening to my car ride on my way into work this morning? Because that's exactly what was happening. There was a crisis, what I felt like in both areas. So I'd like to first start off and say that a crisis is really just an emotional state, right? And it's when we get to a place where our normal coping mechanisms don't seem to be working. And sometimes those crises are our own. We have a crisis. We're bringing that based on our own personal interpretation of what's going on. And sometimes those crises are gifted to you. Like my example this morning, my crisis was gifted to me by someone outside of me who is wanting me to share in their crisis. And, what I would tell you is that you have to pay attention to what are those triggers, right? So for me, I have to know myself well enough. I have to know my authentic self well enough to know what are my triggers that cause me to either react in a calm way when the crisis is shared with me, like this morning, where I can ask questions and I can be the voice of, I've got this handled, I've got this taken care of. Because my best example whenever I'm in a crisis is whoever I'm sharing that crisis with, I just need somebody to help me level set, right? I'm not in balance. I'm not thinking straight. I'm confused. What normally works doesn't work. And so I need someone to have that voice of reason, that voice almost of authority to say, hey, you know what, Daleen, I've got this. Here's what we're going to do. And so I have to know myself well enough to know that when the crisis is gifted to me, I am being that person who is trying to get to where is that person, what's their trigger, and how can I help to alleviate that trigger so that we can move beyond a crisis mode to actually, hey, let's solve this problem and let's do this together. So, I think for me, it's all about, knowing those priorities. And I will tell you, there's no mistake here at Dollar General. Everybody knows that I love this company. I love the people that I work for. But if there is a crisis within my home life, they understand everything is dropped, and that's where my focus is. And so with now where I have a mother who is aging, who the other day she called and she was in Gallatin, Tennessee, and had no idea where she was or how to get home. And I was in a meeting with the executive officers at Dollar General talking about a new program that we were getting ready to roll out. And I glanced down and I kept seeing the phone ring and the phone ring and the phone ring, with my mom. And I thought, well, this is out of the ordinary. So, I just slid my presentation over to my boss. And I said, hey, do you mind if I step out for just a minute? If you guys can, talk about the project and what's working and what's not working, to find out then, that here my mom is, in a place where she's frequented, but had no idea where she was. So that's when I start to lean in then on, on my husband and say, hey, can you give mom a call and, direct her back home again. And let's make sure we've got the car set up with that, auto GPS. And knowing that he was going to take care of that allowed me to then step back into that meeting, finish what I needed to finish on that meeting. And then, tell my boss, hey, I need to step away for the day. I'll be working remote for the rest of the day, but I need to go focus on, what's going on with my mom and what's going on with where she is. And, then vice versa, we've had things happen within our stores where a crisis happens in one of our stores and that interrupts personal time or interrupts family time. And so, knowing that balance, and for me being able to communicate that to both the people that are a part of my tribe, as Janet said, that are part of my personal tribe, but also be able to focus that with the people who I work with on a daily basis, so they understand where my priorities are and at what point to be able to openly dialogue that. But again, guys, just remember, a crisis is a state of feeling, and I'm always leaning into those people who help me to refocus and get my mindset back again so I can make some intelligent decisions and feel like I've regaining some of that ownership and control.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. So I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So for this question, I'm going to direct this question to Kelly and Angie. So Kelly, we'll start with you on this question. Kelly, how do you encourage employees, coworkers, and leaders at your organization to prioritize work-life balance?
I think, as with many companies, but in healthcare, there's a lot of focus on that high achieving person. And so I really, first of all, model what it should look like to work hard and to set clear boundaries when at all possible. But I also spend very intentional time rounding on my employees and ensuring that they are finding that balance for themselves. And that is not something that is done just in one sitting. It's that setting very concise expectations, but also time set aside to meet with each person on a regular basis, talk about what's going on, and even stopping in daily to check on them and making sure that they're not overcommitting their time here or at home for that matter. But what I really see is that it's important that people know that you prioritize work and family in different ways. We aren't present 50% of the time here or there, but it's really showing up the way you want to show up in each instant and to be present in the moment for the work or the family time or the activity that you have going on, and that becomes a much more fulfilling life when we are really able to achieve that. Because each one of us knows that your job will take absolutely everything you want to give to it. And so you could really find yourself committing 100% of your life to this work, and you would be empty. And so in acknowledgement of that, you really have to set aside time for yourself.
Oh, thank you. And Angie, we'll follow up with you on this question.
Excellent. I think I'll just add two points to it. I do talk to, whether it's my direct teams or people that I'm mentoring or working with or who ask advice around this. And I know of 2 different times this year, it's late March, that I've had very different conversations around this. And I'm trying to talk to the person and what's important to them. And with one teammate, I know that he was absolutely overworking himself, and I was watching him do this. He had a lot to do. He thought the more he worked, the better it was. And I was watching these personal sacrifices happening. And, I was just trying to, talk to him about, what do you want to be known for at work? And his sacrifices were too great. And I wanted him to self-assess that. So I was trying to, get him to recognize himself, of the importance of the balance that he needed to bring back, because it was going to make him better at work, frankly. So, helping him to have a mirror moment about that balance, but not, I couldn't be the one to tell him, you have to balance out your personal life on the other side so that you can be better at work. But I wanted him to have that kind of gift, if you will, of thinking about that and seeing it through a different lens, versus just, encouraging to go, to the gym or spend time with his family. And the other was, a teammate on my team who was working herself ragged. And I was seeing that. And I had a very different conversation with her, because I could have that with her, understanding her motivation, where she was at, and, trying to remind her that, her headstone is not going to read, "She worked hard" at the end of her career. We'll all remember that, by the way, and she does work hard, but that's not what she will ultimately be known for. And, just encouraging her to get out there. Now, on a much lighter and brighter note, though, the way I try to bring it to people is by, the importance of work-life balance, that is by modeling it myself, keeping it visible on my calendar. And this Friday, I'm glad my team is not on here, but I'm so excited. I have not done this in a very long time, but I have a meeting blocked with my direct reports on Friday afternoon, and they are nervous right now because they do not know what we're doing. And I actually probably am torturing them a little bit, but all we're doing is, on Friday afternoon, I am thanking them for this incredibly hard first quarter of work they have done. And their only homework is to not work and to send a few photos of their afternoon, whatever it is. By the way, they can take a picture of their Netflix screen. They can go get their license plate. I don't care what they do, but I don't want them in a meeting. I don't want them on Teams, and I don't want them working. I want them to relax. And we can't always give that and do that for them, but I'm trying to model it. I'm trying to give it to them, and I'm trying to say thank you to them. So I'm very excited about that. So please don't tell anybody if you know them.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great story. Thank you. So for our last question, it's time to wrap up. I wish we had more time this afternoon, but for our last question, Lakita, we'll give you the final words of our panel today. Lakita, how big of a role does delegation play in your ability to balance home life and work life?
Bigly. Yes, I, and as I look at how busy my schedule is, I can't imagine trying to do it without some high level of delegation. So at work, I have built an amazing team of leaders. And if you were on a call with me and my direct reports, you would not be able to tell that they reported to me or I reported to them. You would not know, because I have grown so much in respect of hiring really, really, really smart people and being comfortable with them taking the lead on things that they do better, and my sitting back and letting them have the space to and have the floor. And I will tell you, it has just been amazing. In terms of the whole team seems to be lifted by having really elevated all of my leaders to really perform well and to really shine in those things that they do really, really well. My husband loves to cook. I don't so much. So it's awesome that he takes that role. I'm the one who generally is in the car on the way home saying, "Hey, what's for dinner?" That's helpful in terms of the work-life harmony. And then I remember I have 3 sons, and I remember when they were younger, I would get so upset if they changed clothes a couple times a day, because all I was thinking about is, this is laundry I have to do. Well, I decided I can either be mad about this every week or I can do something about it. So what I decided to do as a rite of passage, when you leave elementary school to go to middle school, you start to do your own laundry. So I don't really care how many times you change clothes now because it's not my problem. And so those are just examples of how I've really had to step away and say, okay, there has to be a better way to get all these things done, because most of the things I involve myself with are things that I feel are worthwhile and things that mean something to me. But it doesn't mean I don't get to do them if I don't want to. But certainly having your village and your tribe to giving them the space in your life to really do what they do well, so that in the end, we're all more harmonized than what we have to do in the 24 hours a day that we're given. Life is short. And so, for me, it was really about minimizing the frustrations. And my son and my husband does his own laundry. Each of my sons do their own laundry. I'm only responsible for my laundry, and I take care of the linens and that type of stuff. But it's made life a lot better at home with being able to balance out the responsibilities of some of the things that just come along with your home life.
Very well said. Well, with that, unfortunately, we have to end our panel discussion. But ladies, thank you so much for your time and your wonderful thoughts today.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.